This is Chapter 2 of Legend, June, 13:47 hours, Drake University, Balta Sector, 72 degrees Fahrenheit indoors. I'm sitting in my dean's secretary office, again. On the other side of the frosted glass door, I can see a bunch of my classmates, seniors, all at least 4 years older than me, hanging around in an attempt to hear what's going on. Several of them saw me being yanked out of our afternoon drill class. Today's lesson, how to load and unload the XM 621 rifle by a menacing pair of guards. And whenever that happens, the news spreads all over campus. The Republic's favorite little prodigy is in trouble again. The office is quiet except for the faint hum coming from the dean secretary's computer. I memorized every detail of this room. Hand-cut marble floors imported from Dakota, 324 plastic square ceiling tiles, 20 feet of gray drapes hanging to either side of the glorious elector's portrait on the office's back wall, a 30-inch screen on the side wall with the sound muted and a headline that reads, Traitors, Patriots Group Bombs Local Military Station, Kills 5, followed by Republic Defeats Colonies in Battle for Hillsborough. Arsena Whittaker, the dean secretary herself, is seated behind her desk, tapping on its glass, no doubt typing up my report. This will be my 8th report this quarter. I'm willing to bet I'm the only Drake student who's ever managed to get 8 reports in one quarter without being expelled. Injured your hand yesterday, Miss Whittaker? I say after a while. She stops typing to glare at me. What makes you think that, Miss Empress? The pauses in your keystrokes are off. You're favoring your left hand. Miss Whittaker sighs and leans back in her chair. Yes, June. I twisted my wrist yesterday in a game of kibball. Sorry to hear it. You should try to swing more from your arm and not from your wrist. I meant this simply to be a statement of fact, but it sounded sort of taunting and doesn't seem to have made her any happier. Let's get something straight, Miss Empress, she says. You may think you're very smart. You may think your perfect grades earn you some sort of special treatment. You may even think you have fans at this school. What with all this nonsense? She gestures at the students gathered outside the door. But I've grown incredibly tired of our get-togethers in my office. And believe me, when you graduate and get assigned to whatever post this country chooses for you, your antics won't impress your superiors there. Do you understand me? I nod, because that's what she wants me to do. But she's wrong. I don't just think I'm smart. I'm the only person in the entire Republic with a perfect score of 1500 score on her trial. I was assigned here to the country's top university at 12, 4 years ahead of schedule. Then I skipped my sophomore year. I've earned perfect grades at Drake for 3 years. I am smart. I have what the Republic considers good genes, and better genes make for better soldiers make for better chance of victory against the colonies, my professors always say. And if I feel like my afternoon drills aren't teaching me enough about how to climb walls while carrying weapons, then, well, it wasn't my fault I had to scale the side of a 19-story building with an XM 621 gun strapped to my back. It was self-improvement for the sake of my country. Rumor has it that Day once scaled 5 stories in less than 8 seconds. If the Republic's most wanted criminal can pull that off, then how are we ever going to catch him if we're not just as fast? And if we can't even catch him, how are we going to win the war? Miss Whittaker's desk beeps 3 times. She holds down a button. Yes. Captain Midas Imperis is outside the gate. A voice replies, He's here for his sister. Good, send him in. She releases the button and points a finger at me. I hope that brother of yours starts doing a better job of minding you, because if you end up in my office one more time this quarter... Midas is doing a better job than our dead parents, I reply, maybe more sharply than I intended. We fall into an uncomfortable silence. Finally, after what seems like an eternity, I hear a commotion out in the hall. The students pressed against the door's glass abruptly disperse, and their shadows move aside to make room for a tall silhouette, my brother. As Midas opens the door and steps inside, I can see some girls out in the hall stifling smiles behind their hands. But Midas fixes his full attention on me. We have the same eyes, black with a gold glint, the same long lashes and dark hair. The long lashes work perfectly well for Midas. Even with the door closed behind him, I can still hear the whispers and giggles from outside. It looks like he came from his patrol duties straight to my campus. He's decked out in his full uniform, black officer coat with double rows of gold buttons, gloves, neoprene, spectre lining, captain rank embroidery, shining epaulets on his shoulders, a formal military hat, black trousers, polished boots. My eyes meet his. He's furious. Mrs. Whittaker gives Midas a brilliant smile. "Ah, Captain," she exclaims. "It's a pleasure to see you." Midas taps the edge of his hat in a polite salute. "It's unfortunate it's under these circumstances again," he replies. "My apologies." "Not a problem, Captain." The Dean's secretary waves her hand dismissively. What a brown-noser, especially after what she'd just said about Midas. "It's hardly your fault. Your sister was caught scaling a high-rise during her lunch hour today. She wandered 2 blocks off campus to do it. As you know, students are to only use the climbing walls on campus for physical training, and leaving the campus in the middle of the day is forbidden." "Yes, I'm aware of that," Midas interrupts, looking at me out of the corner of his eye. "I saw the helicopters over Drake at noon, and had a suspicion June might have been involved." There had been 3 helicopters. They couldn't get me off the side of the building by scaling it themselves, so they pulled me off with a net. "Thank you for your help," Midas says to the Dean's secretary. He snaps his fingers at me, my cue to get up. "When June returns to campus, she'll be on her best behavior." I ignore Miss Whittaker's false smile as I follow my brother out of the office and into the hall. Immediately, students hurry over. "June," a boy named Dorian says as he tags along beside us. He'd asked me, unsuccessfully, to the annual Drake Ball 2 years in a row. "Is it true? How high up did you get?" Midas cuts him off with a stern look. "June's heading home." Then he puts a hand firmly on my shoulder and guides me away from my classmates. I glance behind me and manage a smile for them. 14 floors, I call back. That gets them buzzing again. Somehow, this has become the closest relationship I have with the other Drake students. I am respected, discussed, gossiped about, not really talked to. Such is the life of a 15-year-old senior in a university meant for 16 and up. Midas doesn't say another word as we make our way down the corridors past the manicured lawns of the central quad and the glorious elector's statue, and finally through one of the indoor gyms. We pass by the afternoon drills I'm supposed to be participating in. I watch my classmates run along a giant track surrounded by a 360-degree screen simulating some desolate warfront road. They're holding their rifles out in front of them, attempting to load and unload as fast as they can while running. At most other universities, there wouldn't be so many student soldiers, but at Drake, almost all of us are well on our way to career assignments in the Republic's military. A few others are tapped for politics and Congress, and some are chosen to stay behind and teach. But Drake is the Republic's best university, and seeing as how the best are always assigned to the military, our drill room is packed with students. By the time we reach one of Drake's outer streets and I climb into the back seat of our waiting military jeep, Midas can barely contain his anger. "Suspended for a week. Do you want to explain this to me?" he demands. "I get back from a morning of dealing with the Patriot rebels, and what do I hear about? Helicopters 2 blocks from Drake. A girl scaling a skyscraper." I exchange a friendly look with Thomas, the soldier in the driver's seat. "Sorry," I mutter. Midas turns around from his place in the passenger's seat and narrows his eyes at me. "What the hell were you thinking? Did you know you'd wandered right off campus?" "Yes." "Of course. You're 15. You went 14 floors up a..." He takes a deep breath, closes his eyes, and steadies himself. "For once, I'd appreciate it if you let me do my daily tours of duty without worrying myself sick over what you're up to." I try to meet Thomas's eyes again in the rearview mirror, but he keeps his gaze on the road. Of course, I shouldn't expect any help from him. He looks as tidy as ever with his perfectly slicked hair and perfectly ironed uniform, not a strand or thread out of place. Thomas might be several years younger than Midas, and a subordinate on his patrol, but he's more disciplined than anyone I know. Sometimes I wish I had that much discipline. He probably disapproves of my stunts even more than Midas does. We leave downtown Los Angeles behind and travel up the winding highway in silence. The scenery changes from inner Balta's sector 100-floor skyscrapers to densely packed barrack towers and civilian complexes, each one only 20 or 30 stories high, with red guiding lights blinking on their roofs, most with all their paint stripped off after this year's rush of storms. Metal support beams crisscross their walls. I hope they get to upgrade those supports soon. The war's been intense lately, and with several decades of infrastructure funding diverted to supplying the war front, I don't know if these buildings would hold up well in another earthquake. After a few minutes, Midas continues in a calmer voice. "You really scared me today," he says. "I was afraid they'd mistake you for Day and shoot at you." I know he doesn't mean this as a compliment, but I can't help smiling. I lean forward to rest my arms on the top of his seat. "Hey," I say, tugging his ear the way I did when I was a kid. "I'm sorry I made you worry." He lets out a scornful chuckle, but I can tell his anger is already fading. "Yeah, that's what you say every time, Junebug. Is Drake not keeping your brain busy enough? If not, then I don't know what will." "You know, if you'd just take me along on some of your missions, I'd probably learn a lot more and stay out of trouble." "Nice try. You're not going anywhere until you graduate and get assigned to your own patrol." I bite my tongue. Midas did pick me once for a mission last year when all third-year Drake students had to shadow an assigned military branch. His commander sent him to kill a runaway prisoner of war from the colonies. So Midas brought me along with him. Together we chased the POW deeper and deeper into our territory, away from the dividing fences in the strip of land running from Dakota to West Texas that separates the Republic and the colonies, away from the war front where airships dot the sky. I tracked him into an alley in Yellowstone City, Montana, and Midas shot him. During the chase, I broke 3 ribs and had a knife buried in my leg. Now Midas refuses to take me anywhere. When Midas finally speaks again, he sounds grudgingly curious. "So tell me," he whispers, "how fast do you climb those 14 stories?" Thomas makes a disapproving sound in his throat, but I break into a grin. Storms past. Midas loves me again. 6 minutes, I whisper back to my brother. "And 44 seconds. How do you like that?" That must be some sort of record. Not that, you're supposed to do it. Thomas stops the Jeep right behind the lines at a red light and gives Midas an exasperated look. "Come on, Captain," he says. "June, Miss Empress won't learn a thing if you keep praising her for breaking the rules." "Cheer up, Thomas." Midas reaches over and claps him on the back. "Surely breaking a rule once in a while is tolerable, especially if you're doing it to beef up your skills for the Republic's sake. Victory against the colonies. Right?" The light blinks green. Thomas turns his eyes back to the road. He seems to count to 3 in his head before letting the Jeep go forward. "Right," he mutters. "You should still be careful what you're encouraging Miss Empress to do, especially with your parents gone." Midas's mouth tightens into a line, and a familiar, strained look appears in his eyes. No matter how sharp my intuition is, no matter how well I do at Drake, or how perfectly I score in defense and target practice and hand-to-hand combat, Midas's eyes always hold that fear. He's afraid something might happen to me one day, like the car crash that took our parents. That fear never leaves his face, and Thomas knows it. I didn't know our parents long enough to miss them in the same way Midas does. Whenever I cry over losing them, I cry because I don't have any memories of them. Just hazy recollections of long adult legs shuffling around our apartment and hands lifting me from my high chair. That's it. Every other memory from my childhood, looking out into the auditorium as I receive an award, or having soup made for me when I'm sick, or being scolded, or tucked into bed, those are with Midas. We drive past half of Balta sector and through a few poor blocks. Can't these street beggars stay a little farther from our Jeep? Finally, we reach the gleaming terraced high-rises of Ruby, and we're home. Midas gets out first. As I follow, Thomas gives me a small smile. "See you later, Miss Empress," he says, tipping his hat. I stopped trying to convince me to call me June. He'll never change. Still, it's not so bad being called something proper. Maybe when I'm older and Midas doesn't fade at the idea of me dating. "Bye, Thomas. Thanks for the ride." I smile back at him before stepping out of the Jeep. Midas waits until the door has slammed shut before turning to me and lowering his voice. "I'll be home late tonight," he says. There's that tension in his eyes again. "Don't go out alone. News from the war front is they're cutting power to residences tonight to save energy for the airfield bases. So stay put, okay? The streets will be darker than usual." My heart sinks. I wish the Republic would hurry up and win this war already, so that for once we might actually get a whole month of non-stop electricity. "Where are you going? Can I come with you?" I'm overseeing the lab at Los Angeles Central. They're delivering vials of some mutated virus there. It shouldn't take all night, and I already told you, no missions. Midas hesitates. I'll be home as early as I can. We have a lot to talk about. He puts his hands on my shoulder, ignores my puzzled look, and gives me a quick kiss on my forehead. Love you, Junebug, he says his trademark goodbye. He turns to climb back into the Jeep. I'm not going to wait up for you, I call after him, but by now he's already inside and the Jeep's pulling away with him inside of it. Be careful, I murmur, but it's pointless to say now. Midas is too far away to hear me.